Pilots are really important, aren't they? They either set something up really well, or basically make you dread the thought of sitting through whatever boring exposition or world building they have to offer. It's also important for the pilot not to crash the plane and kill all the innocent lives on board. The phrase that links them all is to not mess it up. So let's begin. On the topic of pilots, I think where else should we start than at the beginning? Now, to be as unmeta as possible, the format of the show will be going through various iterations, as this is the prototype. What I'm trying to say is simply sit back, relax, and lower your expectations. Now, with the meta out of the way, let's talk about pilots. One of the most memorable pilots for me has to be Lost's beginning 2 parts. I've decided not to rewatch anything of those episodes before this, so I'll be going off memory. And what I do remember is it being really, really thrilling. I remember the iconic panning back of the camera from the lead protagonist in his plane chair as it zooms out to reveal the crash chaos around him. All the while, screams and all-out panic occur as the camera further and further zooms away. And to me, that is still so vivid. The other aspects, such as the setup for the mystery of the island itself, is introduced to give it us not one, not two, but everything questioned. From why did the plane crash, and what was the thing rustling in the trees, and who are all these people? It gives us anti-exposition, where instead of setting up the scene traditionally, with a "this is Jack and he's on an island and he is a doctor," it decides not to tell you, but instead shows you in the confusion. It shows, doesn't tell. Shows that don't tell are usually rare, as it's much more easier to say something than it is to imply or show, either due to the vision needed to visualize the scene, or budget limitations, or even sometimes communication with the director. I have a feeling everybody on the Lost set was on the same page, and it really did show in the end. At this point, you're hooked, you're interested and empathetic with the characters, and from that, invested. That's what makes a great pilot. It's interesting, isn't it? How first impressions have ingrained so much into us and our society. It's what is even taught now in schools, that first impressions matter. One shot to make it work or it just won't. It's that one-shot mentality that increases that pressure of needing to be on the ball and aware. There's an argument there for whether or not it's our natural instinct to be the best in the pack and to be the top dog. On the other hand, it almost seems like a product, doesn't it? It's like if you don't impress someone or give the right vibe, they'll trade you in with a warranty, because they've interpreted what you've shown as not worthy of their attention. This works both ways. Obviously, it's not as bleak as that. I mean, I've had second shots before, and I'm sure many others have, but for the most part, it's almost everywhere. Job interviews. In order to bag that prime-time vocation, you've got to sell yourself. Sometimes pander, but most importantly impress if you want that job. Even dating. With the Tinders and other dating apps, it's gone to an extreme as to sometimes only a picture for the first impression's what gets that date. Or sometimes even the sex, and then on the date or the sex, it's another first impression within the first impression. Also entertainment. The reason why most movies have a good but the ending was bad rating tends to be because the good bit was at the beginning to grab you. Video games, especially mobile gaming, gives you the fun things to do for the first hour or so, then takes a nosedive and notoriously slips into microtransactions, or pay whilst you play. Even the title of this video would have been a first impression for some of you on some level. First impressions are everywhere, and undeniably play a huge role in our relationships with each other and our everyday indulgences. Whether or not it's a bad trait of our society is the debate. Arguably one of the best video games for its world design and gameplay, Dark Souls is phenomenal. Like the name suggests, this isn't a happy game, despite some of the lighter elements. It's purposely depressing. It's common to see the tagline, environmental storytelling, when discussing Dark Souls, and it's not wrong. The start of the game is a testament to game design, respecting the player and most importantly, teaching the player on how to play and the rules of the world. Before playing, you're shown an intro cinematic that depicts gods that are named Lords of the Flame. These powerful beings wage war against the everlasting dragons, who too inhabit the world. Words wouldn't do the intro any justice. To put it simply, the lords kill the dragons and build cities and kingdoms, until they all go mad with power and essentially corrupt, and become desperate to stay alive. If you're interested to check out more of the story, I advise you to check out Vaati Vidya's channel for more of an in-depth look at the story. After that, in the beginning sequence, you're given cues on how to progress in the environment, hence the environmental storytelling phrase. It's ingenious, and admittedly common sense to have a long corridor instead of a move forward prompt. The only control hints you get are scattered on the ground, with the choice of reading them or not. The game repeatedly silently tells you to figure it out for yourself, as you have the tools. Also, it's incredibly difficult with the death system, but as far as first impressions go, it's beautiful in its game flow and world. Now you could ask, would it be as interesting without the insane lords and demons? And the answer would be probably not. However, it would still be a coherent respect for the player's ability gameplay wise, and be enjoyable in the process. The Bible. Whether or not you're religious, it's fascinating and beautiful, with its morals and storytelling interpretations that are still to this day being interpreted with every generation. One of the most notable stories is of Pontis Pilate, or Pilate, however you like it. Pilate was a governor of Emperor Tiberius during his lead of the Roman Empire, and was in charge of the tax collection of Judea. Jesus was brought to him and was arrested due to him being blasphemous and claiming to be the King of Jews. Jesus also convinced some of Pilate's tax collectors to quit and instead follow him. The public at the time saw Jesus as a blaspheme and demanded his death. Pilate was torn, as it wasn't a true crime that Jesus committed, so he mulled it over, seeking various counsel, and most telling him either it would strengthen Rome's dominance over the Jews and that they would be feared because of it. Other members of Pilate's order and other of the Roman Empire's officials told him this. After the public repeatedly demanding for Jesus' death, Pilate went through with the crucifixion of Jesus, inscribing on the cross, King of the Jews. It's a saddening story that truly depicts the state of the world at the time, and begs to question, is it right to do something if you have to, even if it's bad? Obviously murder is quite high on the spectrum, and on paper yes it is wrong, but to take away the message of whether or not it's right, in all instances, is quite interesting. For instance, what would the worst thing you would do if you was pressurised and forced to do it? How far would you go? So much like a well-paced horror game, the introduction and first impressions impact greatly on the overall investment, loyalty and consistency of the relationship with the recipient. It's fact. If you want someone to care, you have to give them something to care about. So thank you very much for listening, goodbye and have a great day.